Dad's silent revenge.
On Thanksgiving morning, my daughter Rebecca texted me, "Dad, Ryan says we can't take responsibility for you when you get older. Hire a caregiver. We have our own lives." I stared at those words for a full minute, then called my lawyer. By evening, I'd cut her from my $2.1 million inheritance. When she showed up at my restaurant that night, nobody was ready for what happened next. My name is Benjamin Turner. I'm 57 years old, and I've been running seafood restaurants in Charleston, South Carolina for 25 years. Before that, I served 8 years in the Navy aboard destroyers and cruisers, mostly in the Atlantic Fleet. The discipline I learned there, attention to detail, strategic thinking, proper documentation, helped me build Turner's Catch from a single storefront on King Street into 3 successful locations that became Charleston landmarks. I always thought my daughter Rebecca would inherit everything. I was wrong about a lot of things. Rebecca used to be different. I remember her at 8 years old, standing on a milk crate in my first kitchen, watching me prepare she crab soup during the dinner rush. Her eyes would light up when I explained each ingredient, the fresh crab meat, the cream, that hint of sherry that makes all the difference. She'd taste the broth with a tiny spoon and suggest we needed more pepper or maybe less salt. Sometimes she was right. That little girl who loved being in the kitchen with her old man disappeared somewhere along the way. The change started 4 years ago when Rebecca married Ryan Matthews. Ryan came from what looked like money-expensive suits, confident handshake, business cards that said investment consultant in raised gold letters. He swept my daughter off her feet with talk about portfolio diversification and wealth management strategies. Guy had all the right words, all the smooth moves. I should have paid closer attention to the fact that his own investments kept failing spectacularly. First year of marriage, Rebecca called me on a Tuesday afternoon, voice shaky. "Dad, I hate to ask, but we need to borrow $8,000 for furniture." Ryan's commission check got delayed, and we already put deposits down at the furniture store. I transferred the money that same day from my business account. She promised to pay it back when Ryan's big deal closed next month. That commission never materialized, and neither did the repayment, but the requests kept coming like clockwork. 3 months later, it was $15,000 for emergency repairs on a BMW sedan I'd bought her as a wedding gift. The transmission had supposedly failed after only 12,000 miles, then $22,000 to help Ryan through what he called a temporary rough quarter in his business. His clients were restructuring their portfolios, he explained, and cash flow was tight. After that came $12,000 for a vacation to Kauai Island, so they could reconnect and clear their heads during this stressful period. Every single time, same script. "We'll pay you back, Dad. Ryan just needs a few more weeks to close this deal, or his biggest client is about to sign, then we'll get caught up with you." Empty promises delivered with Rebecca's sweet voice and Ryan's firm handshake. They never paid back a single dollar. The biggest hit came 18 months after the wedding. Rebecca called crying. Real tears, not the manipulative kind. They'd found their dream house on James Island, she said, a beautiful colonial with water views and enough space to start a family. But they needed help with the down payment because Ryan's capital was tied up in a once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity that couldn't be liquidated without substantial penalties. The house was listed at $380,000. They needed $76,000 for the down payment. I wrote the check the next day, watching my daughter's face light up like Christmas morning when I handed it to her at the title company. "You're the best father anyone could ask for," she whispered, hugging me tight in front of the real estate agents and lawyers. I wanted to believe her words meant something, but after they moved into that house, my house, really, since my money bought it, things changed fast. The weekly Sunday dinners at my place stopped happening. Rebecca would call to cancel at the last minute. "Ryan's got a client dinner," or "we're just exhausted from moving." Phone calls became shorter and less frequent. When they did visit, usually for holidays or my birthday, Rebecca seemed distant and distracted. Her eyes would glaze over when I talked about the restaurants, about menu changes, or the new chef I'd hired for the Mount Pleasant location. Ryan made no effort to hide his boredom during these family gatherings. He'd check his phone constantly during dinner, responding to what he claimed were urgent business texts. Sometimes he'd take calls right at the table, stepping into my backyard to conduct what sounded like heated conversations about money and deadlines. The moment that really opened my eyes happened about 6 months ago. They'd come for Sunday dinner, and I was grilling red snapper on my back deck while Rebecca and Ryan waited in the living room. I went inside to get the marinade I'd forgotten and heard Ryan talking on his phone in my guest bathroom. The door was cracked, and his voice carried clearly. "Yeah, I'm at the old man's place right now, just killing time until we can leave without being rude. But listen, he's sitting on serious money, 3 restaurants, prime Charleston real estate. probably worth close to 2 million. I'm working the angle, but these old military guys are stubborn about their money. The old man, that's what I'd become to my son-in-law. A target to be worked, an angle to be played. I stood there in my own hallway holding a bowl of marinade, listening to him describe me like a mark in some long con game. I didn't confront him that night. Navy training taught me to gather intelligence before making any moves. But something cold and calculating settled in my chest, the same feeling I'd had decades ago when preparing for complex naval operations. The game had changed, and I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. 3 weeks before that devastating Thanksgiving text, I was sitting in my office above the King Street restaurant, going through quarterly profit reports. It was late afternoon, golden hour lighting streaming through the windows that looked out over Charleston Harbor. My hands had been shaking lately. Nothing serious, my doctor said, just stress and too much caffeine. But it made me think about getting older, about what happens when you need help with things you used to handle easily. The restaurant business is demanding, physical work even when you're the owner. Long days, weekend shifts, constant decisions about staffing and supplies and customer complaints. At 57, I was starting to feel the weight of 25 years in the industry. My knees ached after busy nights. My back protested when I helped unload seafood deliveries. For the first time, I was seriously considering what my life might look like in 10 or 15 years when I couldn't maintain this pace. That's what prompted me to reach out to Rebecca. I wanted to have an honest conversation about the future, about what kind of support I might need as I aged, about whether she and Ryan saw themselves playing any role in my later years. Looking back, I was naive to think I'd get honesty from people who'd been systematically deceiving me for years. I sent the text at 1:30 in the afternoon. Honey, can we talk soon about the future? Having some health concerns and want to discuss what support might look like as I get older. Love you. Simple, direct, the kind of message any father might send to his adult child. I watched those 3 dots appear and disappear on my phone screen for nearly 20 minutes. Rebecca was typing, then stopping, then typing again. Whatever she was wrestling with, it was taking time to work through. When her response finally came at 2:45, it hit like a physical blow. Dad, be realistic. Ryan says we can't take responsibility for you. Hire a caregiver when the time comes. We have our own lives to worry about. I read those words 3 times, each one cutting deeper. 25 years building something from nothing, countless early mornings when I'd arrive at 5 a.m. to prep for the day, late nights balancing books and planning menus. $35,000 for Rebecca's private school education at Porter Gaud. $85,000 for her teaching degree at College of Charleston. $45,000 for her wedding, where Ryan's family looked down their noses at my quaint little seafood establishments. This was my return on investment. A text message telling me to hire strangers because my own daughter and son-in-law had their own lives to worry about. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I did what any good sailor does when facing rough waters. I assessed the situation methodically. I opened my filing cabinet and pulled out a thick folder I'd been maintaining since Rebecca's marriage. Call it Navy training or businessman's instinct, but I document everything. Bank transfer receipts, canceled checks, printed emails, text message, screenshots, a complete paper trail of every financial interaction with my daughter and her husband. I spread the documents across my desk like charts for a navigation briefing. Then I started adding it up, transaction by transaction. The furniture loan that was never repaid, the car repair bills, Ryan's temporary business shortfalls, the vacation expenses, the house down payment that I'd structured as a gift but secretly hoped might be acknowledged someday. The first total shocked me. I double-checked it, then triple-checked it with my calculator. $380,000. That's what I'd given my daughter and her husband over 4 years of marriage. Not lent, given, because none of it had ever come back despite countless promises of repayment next month or after this deal closes. $380,000, more than most people make in 5 years of honest work. More than I'd spent on my own living expenses during that same period. Money that could have upgraded my restaurant kitchens, expanded into new locations, or simply been saved for my actual retirement instead of funding Ryan's failed investment schemes and their lifestyle inflation. I sat there as the afternoon light faded over Charleston Harbor, watching boats return to dock after day trips. Below me in the restaurant, dinner prep was starting. I could hear Timothy Coleman, my head chef, calling out prep assignments to the kitchen staff. Tim had been with me for 15 years, starting as a line cook fresh out of culinary school. Now he ran my kitchens like a Navy chief, running his division, efficient, disciplined, loyal. The servers were setting up their stations, folding napkins and polishing glasses with the precision I insisted on. These people were my real family, I realized, the ones who showed up every day, rain or shine, who took pride in their work and cared about maintaining the reputation we'd built together. They understood something Rebecca had forgotten, that respect is earned through consistency. Loyalty is built through mutual support, and family means being there when it matters. Rebecca's text message had just shown me exactly where I ranked in her priorities. Somewhere below inconvenient, slightly above a disposable ATM. My hands stopped shaking. Something cold and clear settled in my mind, the same focused calm I'd felt during emergency drills at sea. The situation required strategic action, not emotional reaction. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Marcus Webb, an estate planning attorney I'd met at a Chamber of Commerce networking event 2 years earlier. Marcus had given a presentation about succession planning for family businesses, discussing how to protect assets from both taxes and family disputes. At the time, I'd thought his warnings about ungrateful heirs sounded cynical. Now they seemed prophetic. I called his office and scheduled an appointment for the following week. Next, I dialed a number I hadn't used in 3 years. Michelle Brooks had served with me on the USS Haler back in the early 90s. She'd been a master at arms then, responsible for investigations and security. After leaving the Navy, she'd become a private investigator specializing in financial fraud cases. Michelle understood how to follow money trails and document evidence that would hold up in court. "Ben Turner," she said when she answered, recognizing my voice immediately. "It's been too long, sailor. What's going on? I need a professional favor." "Shell. Someone's been working a long con on me, and I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with before I make my next move." There was a pause. Michelle had always been sharp, quick to read between the lines. Family, son-in-law, investment consultant who's been bleeding me dry for 4 years. I've got documentation on my end, but I need to know what he's really up to, who else might be involved, what his actual financial situation looks like. "Send me what you've got. I'll start with public records, business filings, credit reports, if I can access them legally. This will run about $200 a day plus expenses. Could take 2 weeks for a complete workup. Money's not the issue. Accuracy is. I need to know everything before I decide how to respond." "Roger that. I'll start tomorrow." After hanging up with Michelle, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: control. For too long, I'd been reactive, responding to Rebecca's requests and Ryan's manipulation without seeing the bigger picture. Now I was gathering intelligence, planning my response, taking charge of the situation instead of being a victim of it. That evening, I stayed late at the restaurant, long after the last customer had left and the cleaning crew had finished. I sat at my usual corner table where I could see both the kitchen and the dining room. The same spot where I'd sat countless nights over the past 25 years watching my dream take shape. I kept thinking about that little girl on the milk crate, tasting soup and suggesting improvements. Where had she gone? When exactly had my daughter transformed into someone who could write those words without a second thought? The answer came in flashes of memory, scenes I'd pushed aside but never quite forgotten. 2 years ago, I'd invited Rebecca and Ryan for Sunday dinner. I'd spent the afternoon preparing her favorite childhood meal, low country boil with fresh shrimp I'd bought directly from the boats that morning. She arrived an hour late without apology, spent the entire meal checking her phone. When I asked what was so urgent, she sighed, like I'd asked her to explain quantum physics to a child. "Just work stuff, Dad. You wouldn't understand. I'd run 3 successful businesses for 25 years, but apparently her part-time position at an elementary school involved complexities beyond my comprehension." Ryan had been more direct over dessert, explaining in that patronizing tone people use when they think they're educating you about how my traditional business model was outdated. Real wealth comes from smart investments, Ben, not from, manual labor and customer service. He said customer service the way someone might say sewage treatment. I'd smiled and nodded, playing the humble old restaurateur. Inside, I was calculating Ryan's investment track record based on what Rebecca had accidentally mentioned over the previous months. From what I could piece together, Ryan had lost more money than he'd made on every venture he'd touched. Michelle's investigation took exactly 2 weeks. What she found made that initial $380,000 look like amateur hour. Ryan hadn't just been wasting my money, he'd been actively gambling with it. Of the $180,000 I'd given them over the previous 18 months, nearly $120,000 had vanished into cryptocurrency speculation, penny stocks, and a Myrtle Beach condo development that existed mostly in a con artist's imagination. He's not really a successful investment consultant. Michelle told me sitting in my office with her comprehensive report spread across the desk. He has the credentials, but his track record is catastrophic. Every major investment he's advised clients on in the past 3 years has lost money. Most of his clients fired him after the first year. She slid another document across the desk. And this is interesting. 6 weeks ago, he tried to take out a home equity loan on the house you bought them. The bank rejected the application because their title search showed you as a co-owner due to the down payment structure. He can't borrow against the property without your signature. Ryan had tried to leverage my house, the one my money had purchased, and failed. because my lawyer had been smart enough to protect my investment when we'd structured the original purchase. There's more, Michelle continued. Her expression grim. He owes his former business partner $85,000 from a real estate flip that went south 2 years ago. There's a judgment against him. The partner's attorney has been trying to collect through wage garnishment, but Ryan doesn't have enough legitimate income to make it worthwhile. If they can't recover the debt through normal channels, they'll start going after assets. Assets like the house, my house. How bad is his gambling problem? Bad enough that he's been banned from 2 casinos in Atlantic City. I found records of him taking cash advances on multiple credit cards to fund poker games. He's into several bookies for college football and basketball bets. Conservative estimate, he's probably down about $200,000 over the past 2 years. I gathered all the documents, Michelle's investigation, bank transfer records, text messages where Rebecca had promised repayment, emails from Ryan outlining his investment strategies. 25 years of running restaurants had taught me how to build an airtight case with documentation. Every transaction was recorded, every promise documented, every lie preserved in writing. The day after Christmas, which Rebecca and Ryan had spent with his family, no invitation extended to me despite my reaching out twice. I met with Marcus Webb in his office on Meeting Street. His conference room overlooked the historic district, all polished mahogany and law books that had witnessed decades of Charleston family disputes. "Mr. Turner," Marcus said after reviewing my documentation for nearly an hour, "this is one of the most thorough cases of financial exploitation I've seen. The paper trail is immaculate, but I have to warn you, changing your will at this point will create a family earthquake. The earthquake already happened when my daughter told me to hire strangers to take care of me in my old age." Marcus nodded slowly, a hint of approval in his experienced eyes. "Fair enough. We can draft a new will, but given what I see here, I'd recommend something more bulletproof, an irrevocable trust structure." He explained it like a military briefing, which I appreciated. Instead of waiting until I died for a will to take effect, we'd transfer ownership of my assets into a trust entity immediately. I'd remain the managing trustee with complete control, all income rights, and all decision-making authority for life. But legally, the assets would belong to the trust, not to me personally. When you die, they pass according to the trust documents, not through probate, which means there's no will for your daughter to contest. The assets are already transferred. She could try to sue the trust, but she'd have to prove you weren't mentally competent when you created it. I thought about my restaurants, about the young veterans I'd hired over the years who understood hard work, discipline, and loyalty, people who'd served their country and wanted a chance to build something meaningful in civilian life. "I want to create a foundation," I told Marcus, "culinary training scholarships specifically for young veterans, people who understand what service means, who will actually use the opportunity to build careers instead of funding gambling habits." "That's even better from a legal standpoint," Marcus replied. "Charitable foundations are much harder to challenge than family inheritances. You'd be creating something that serves the public good." 3 weeks later, the Turner Veteran Culinary Foundation existed as a legal entity. 85% of my restaurant business, the buildings, equipment, brand recognition, everything, now belong to the foundation. I remain the managing trustee with full operational control and all income rights for life. After my death, the foundation would fund full culinary school scholarships for honorably discharged veterans from South Carolina. The remaining 15% of my business and my personal house stayed in my name, subject to my regular will. Rebecca would inherit $50,000 minus enough that she couldn't claim complete disinheritance and challenge the whole structure, but nowhere near enough to fund Ryan's gambling habits or failed investment schemes. I signed the trust documents on a Tuesday morning in Marcus's conference room. 2 witnesses, a notary, everything properly documented and sealed according to South Carolina law. When it was done, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. For 4 years, I'd been playing defense, giving money, trying to maintain a relationship, hoping things would improve somehow. That ended with Rebecca's Thanksgiving message. The will change had been my opening move. This trust was checkmate, set up 3 moves ahead while my opponents were still playing checkers. February brought the consequences I'd been expecting. The IRS contacted me about Ryan's tax situation. During their review related to his business partner's lawsuit, they discovered something interesting. Ryan had never reported the substantial gifts I'd given him and Rebecca as income. Under federal tax law, any gift over $15,000 per year needs to be declared by the recipient. Ryan had failed to report nearly $140,000 over 3 years. The IRS agent, a thorough woman named Patricia Wells, asked for complete documentation of all financial transfers to my daughter and son-in-law. I provided every bank statement, every canceled check, every text message where Rebecca had asked for money and promised repayment. The paper trail was immaculate because I'd maintained military-level records from day one. Estimated tax liability with penalties and interest, $52,000. Rebecca called me the day she received the IRS notice, her voice tight with stress. Dad, did you give them all that information about the money? They asked for documentation of gifts I'd made to family members. I provided accurate records. You're not trying to help us with this, are you? No, I said honestly, but I'm not trying to hurt you either. I answered their questions truthfully. What happens after that is the natural consequence of choices you and Ryan made. Long pause. Ryan's furious. He says you're trying to destroy us. Ryan should have considered tax consequences before accepting money he never intended to repay. Spring brought the full weight of their collapsing situation into focus. Ryan faced potential fraud charges from his business partner's lawsuit. The IRS wanted $52,000 they didn't have. Rebecca had to take a second job tutoring high school students in the evenings. They put their house on the market, my house, really, to try to raise cash for Ryan's legal problems. That's when Rebecca called asking to meet for coffee. Just the two of us, she specified. No Ryan. We met at a small place on Broad Street, neutral territory in the historic district. She looked older, worn down, but somehow clearer than I'd seen her in years. The desperate edge in her voice was gone, replaced by something that sounded like exhaustion mixed with recognition. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she said without preamble, stirring her coffee absently. About that text message, about what I said on Thanksgiving. Ryan kept telling me you were trying to control our lives, that we needed to set firm boundaries with you. I believed him. She finally looked up at me. But I see now what he was doing, isolating me from you, making me choose between him and my family every time money came up. When you gave the IRS those records, Ryan started screaming about how you'd betrayed us, how you were trying to ruin him deliberately. What changed your mind? You didn't make him gamble away our money. You didn't make him lie to his clients or fail to report gift income. All you did was tell the truth when federal agents asked you direct questions. Her voice cracked slightly. I realized I'd let him turn me against my own father while he was stealing from both of us. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila folder. I've been documenting things too, Dad. Credit card statements, bank records, casino receipts I found in his car. Ryan's been lying to me about everything. The gambling, the failed investments, how much debt we're really in. I reviewed her documentation while she talked. Ryan owed money to bookies in 3 states. He'd maxed out credit cards, taking cash advances for poker games. The investment opportunities he'd pitched to me were either complete fabrications or schemes he'd already lost money on before asking for my help. I filed for divorce last week, Rebecca said quietly. Found a lawyer who specializes in financial fraud cases. She thinks I can protect some assets if I act fast enough. What about the house? We'll have to sell it. Ryan's debts are too big, and I can't afford the mortgage on a teacher's salary anyway. She managed a weak smile. I'm moving back into that garage apartment behind Mrs. Henderson's house on Sullivan's Island. Remember that place? I rented it right after college, I remembered. A tiny space, but clean and affordable, walking distance to the beach. Rebecca had been happy there, teaching elementary school and saving money for her future. Before Ryan convinced her she deserved more luxury than her salary could provide. Dad, I know about the foundation. Ryan hired a lawyer to look into challenging your will, but his attorney told him about the trust structure. Said it was legally bulletproof. She shook her head. Ryan was furious, but honestly, I think what you're doing is beautiful. You understand why I had to do it? I understand that I threw away our relationship for someone who was using both of us. The foundation will help people who actually deserve it, veterans who understand service and sacrifice. Tears started down her cheeks, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from her in years. I'm not asking you to change anything. I'm not asking for forgiveness I haven't earned. I just wanted you to know that I finally see what I lost. We talked for another hour, not about money or legal issues, but about the years when she'd been genuinely happy. Teaching kids, helping them learn to read, the satisfaction of making a difference in young lives. She told me about the veterans in her classroom, kids whose parents were deployed overseas, who understood responsibility and discipline in ways their civilian classmates didn't. Maybe someday I could help with the foundation, she said as we prepared to leave. Not for money, but because I remember why you taught me to love cooking in the first place. It was never about the business. It was about taking care of people. 6 months later, the Turner Veteran Culinary Foundation awarded its first scholarships. 15 young veterans, $18,000 each, covering full tuition at Johnson & Wales Culinary School in Charleston, plus living stipends and professional mentorship. The ceremony was held at the Charleston Harbor Resort with 200 people in attendance. Veteran service organizations, local chefs, restaurant owners, and military families. I stood at the podium looking out at faces that represented everything I valued: service, dedication, the willingness to work hard for something meaningful. 25 years ago, I started with one restaurant and a belief that good food brings communities together. Today, these scholarships honor that same principle, using our resources to serve others who've already served their country. The scholarship recipients gathered around me afterward, eager young men and women who understood that opportunity comes with responsibility. I shook each hand, looked each one in the eye. Don't thank me, just do the work. Learn everything you can, then use that knowledge to serve others. In the crowd, I spotted Rebecca standing near the back, wearing a simple dress instead of the designer clothes she'd favored during her marriage to Ryan. She'd driven down from Columbia, where she was teaching 5th grade again and sharing that garage apartment with a fellow teacher to save money. After the crowd dispersed, she approached slowly. "It's beautiful, Dad, what you've created here. I wish I'd understood sooner what really mattered to you." We walked to the harbor together as evenings settled over Charleston. The same waters where I'd learned discipline and leadership decades ago, where I'd developed the strategic thinking that built my restaurants and ultimately protected my legacy from people who tried to exploit it. "Do you regret it?" she asked as we stood watching boats return to dock, the foundation changing everything, losing what we used to have. I thought about that devastating text message, about 4 years of being systematically used, about the choice between dignity and an easy relationship with my daughter. "I regret that it became necessary." I said, "Finally, I regret that you forced me to choose between self-respect and family, but the choice itself? No." Justice always has a price, Rebecca. The price of my justice was losing the daughter I thought I had. But if I hadn't acted, I would have lost something more important myself and the chance to create something meaningful from the wreckage. She nodded slowly, accepting the weight of that truth. That Thanksgiving text had cost Rebecca nearly $2 million. But it gave me something more valuable than any inheritance, the knowledge that when everything was on the line, I had the courage to choose principle over convenience, legacy over exploitation, justice over the easy path. The Turner Veteran Culinary Foundation would train young veterans for decades to come, turning my life's work into opportunities for people who understood service and sacrifice. Rebecca was rebuilding her life on honest foundations, teaching children and learning to value relationships over material comfort. Sometimes the most expensive lessons teach the most valuable truths. We'd both learned what really mattered when everything else was stripped away. Sometimes protecting what you've built requires the courage to disappoint people who never truly valued it, and that courage becomes the foundation for everything meaningful that follows. The greatest inheritance isn't money passed down to ungrateful hands, but purpose planted in soil where it can actually grow,